This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, disappointing factory activity growth from China knocked down emerging market stocks today. That saw MSCI's equity index falling 0.8%. That's its worst day in more than a week. Now, in South Africa, the main stock index dropped for a second day. A weaker rand pulled banks, insurers and retailers lower today, of course, countering gains in local market heavyweights Richmond and Naspers. In Nigeria, the all share was up almost 8%, but in the banking sector, it was a tough day for the country's oldest and third largest lender, First Bank. Its stock fell almost 4% today, the lowest price it's traded this year so far. And that, of course, was after a tussle with the central bank for appointing a new CEO without regulatory approval. That, of course, resulted in the Apex Bank removing its board. Now, also coming up on today's show. Zimbabwe launches a land bank that will expand finance to resettled farmers. The Eurozone economy slides back into recession. And strawberry farming gains popularity amongst young Nigerians. Well, we begin today's show in Tanzania, where an agreement for a $30 billion liquefied natural gas project is expected within 6 months. Now, that's after the country's new president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, called for a resumption of negotiations that, of course, had stalled for more than a year. She recently told lawmakers that talks over the LNG plant had dragged on for far too long, and, of course, she promised to kickstart that project. Well, let's now get the latest on that project from Daniel Kijo. He joins us in Dar es Salaam. Daniel, great to have you on the show with us as always. Now, of course, talks on this proposed LNG project fell apart back in 2019. What was the reason that we saw those negotiations stalling before? And how does the fact that there is a new administration now in office factor into the progress we are now seeing?
Hi, Uche. Thank you so much for having me. Now, from the Tanzanian government's perspective, the delay was not really on its part or due to its fault, if you like to say so. This $30 billion project is important for the country. Now, according to the government, it is the international oil companies or IOCs that sort of were not seeing eye to eye on certain key issues. We're talking about Shell and Equinor here. This is a big contract, it's a big deal. So there were certain issues that were still being discussed over these last 6 years. The government says it had to wait for investors to align themselves, and then the government would look at sort of these details and ensure that it favors the people of Tanzania when it comes to sort of benefiting from its natural resources. The project now is obviously set to continue, and although another reason why now we're kicking off this talk is that 2020 was a very challenging year for the sort of global energy sector, with sort of significant shocks that nobody would predict, that forced many countries and many companies to sort of reevaluate the priorities and look at how they critically on how they approach the investments in different countries. Now, it was a difficult year, like I said. So January 21st of this year, Shell and Equinor, the two partners who will partner with Tanzania to sort of execute this project, agreed to sort of work together and join forces in an attempt to make this project a reality for Tanzania. And now we know that the MOU was signed in January, and the collaboration now agreement is on the table, and the Tanzanian government is ready to go. So far, the Prime Minister has given instructions to continue. Last week, we heard the Prime Minister giving instructions to a committee. We also know that the government spokesperson told me when we spoke earlier that about $2.4 million has already been paid as compensation to citizens who are living around the area where the project would be. So as it stands, things are ready to go.
Well, it certainly has taken a while to see it come to fruition. We know it's been in the works since 2014. Talk to us about the specifics of this project and how beneficial it will be for Tanzania going forward.
Well, Uche, we are talking about a lot of natural gas. Tanzania has about 57 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in the Lindi area. And Tanzania getting this big $30 billion deal is huge for a lot of people. First of all, it would definitely firstly create thousands of jobs for people in the value chain and through sort of local content and local companies being involved in the production. It will create large scale and small scale businesses that feed the project, from, you know, ladies and women who provide food, to people who provide equipment, to transport, and all these Tanzanians who will be employed in the project. But also from the gas, this would be able to provide reliable electricity for power stations in Tanzania, hence unlocking sort of cheap energy for the industrial sector, which is a key drive that Tanzania is trying to go for, sort of industrializing, as well as improved transport. Gas is used in the transport sector. It will also fuel a lot of smelting operations, and many other industrial applications, possible benefits of this country. And according to estimations, the sale of LNG to international markets, taxes, royalties, dividends would bring a lot of revenue for the government. And we do know that Tanzania is looking to industrialize, so having a plan to a project like this is just an extra sort of benefit to ensure that the industrial drive is fueled by LNG as well. There's a lot of social services that will benefit: schools, hospitals, roads. All these are benefits of this project. And like I touched on in the first question that you asked me, Uche, they are estimating that about $4.3 billion a year could be made as profits, as revenue coming in from the project based on current global market prices for LNG. So it's a huge project.
Well, of course, the last administration had sort of been stronger when it came to reforming the mining sector. We saw them overhauling mining legislation in the country. Does this announcement now signal a sort of change in approach to policy, to legislation, and basic relations with the mining sector going forward?
Well, Uche, I wouldn't really say it's a change. Perhaps a better word would be a continuation of what the late President Magufuli had started when he took power in 2015. His whole philosophy was revising the mineral mining laws, and a lot of them have been reformed. He went on to look at different elements of different contracts that Tanzania had with some miners, but rather she's now asking and push this directive to ensure that things can start going and procedures can go on and construction can kick off as well. We also know that she has, in her first speech and address to the country, she really focused on making sure that Tanzania now would focus on making sure investors find ease of business and could come in and invest in Tanzania in a way that doesn't have bureaucracy. And this definitely includes the LNG project we're discussing here. She has said that Tanzania is open for business. She had called on to different international investors who are looking to come in Tanzania. In fact, last week we heard a report about 800 Chinese companies are looking to come and invest in Tanzania. So this follows the same vein, of the LNG sort of approach, that now we want to make sure that the gas is extracted, liquefied, and the Tanzanians can benefit, as well as Shell, Equinor, and all the players involved. So it's a continuation, but she has been very clear and very hard on this point from the beginning of her tenure.
Well, as always, great to have your insights, Daniel. That, of course, is Daniel Kijo joining us there in Tanzania. Well, let's head over to Zimbabwe now. A land bank aiming to expand finance to resettled farmers has been launched. The Agriculture Finance Corporation will assist in agricultural insurance and leasing to farmers. From Harare, here's CGTN's Farai Makutuya with the details.
Zimbabwe has restructured Agribank, a commercial bank, into a diversified agricultural finance institution to provide crucial yet sparse finance to farmers so they can enhance their productive capacity. Thousands of farmers resettled during the country's land reform program have decried the lack of adequate finance to scale up their operations, resulting in low productivity and underutilization of farms.
This is an integral part of our agriculture and food systems transformation strategy. Inclusive, sustainable agricultural financing and development are among the key success factors for a transformative agricultural sector. The agriculture and food systems transformation strategy will transform agriculture from a US $5.3 billion industry to a US $8.2 billion industry by 2025, with exports exceeding $4.5 billion by that year.
The Land Bank incorporates a commercial bank, leasing arm, and an agricultural insurance division to mitigate the risk factors that have plagued farming in recent years due to erratic weather. Unlike existing commercial institutions, the Finance Corporation will not necessarily insist on collateral security, but advance some loans on the strength of business projects. The provision of appropriate finance is crucial to helping small-scale and communal farmers make the transition from seasonal and subsistence farming to more commercially viable agriculture. 700 million Zimbabwe dollars, about $8.3 million US dollars, has been allocated as initial capital.
A strong balance sheet for the Land Bank, Your Excellency, is critical in order to enable it to undertake its mission of underpinning agricultural recovery and growth. And to this end, government is exploring various strategies to strengthen the Land Bank's balance sheet, including the transfer of unencumbered state land to the Land Bank.
Zimbabwe's agriculture sector is set to rebound on the back of a good rainy season that's seen a surge in production across major crops, including maize, whose harvest rose from 907 million metric tons in 2020 to a projected 2.7 million this year, and tobacco, whose deliveries are forecast to rise to 200 million kilograms from 135 million last year. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Meanwhile, Egypt has launched the second phase of an economic reform program that it started in 2016. The new stage is aimed at creating jobs, attracting investments, and also targets growth rates of over 7% by the fiscal year 2025 to 2026. Here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim reporting.
The Egyptian government calls it a program of structural reforms to capitalize on the previous successful IMF-backed economic measures. It will target sustainable growth, make up for the losses incurred by the COVID-19 pandemic, and achieve ambitious growth rates of 7% in 3 years.
Achieving 7% growth rate is based on several indicators, such as the success in containing the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. The government is increasing public investments in different sectors, in housing, infrastructure, agriculture, in manufacturing by building industrial cities, while concentrating on IT technology and exports of goods and commodities to increase hard currency inflows and raise foreign currency reserves.
Influenced by the effects of the coronavirus pandemic, one sector that will see the most growth is healthcare. Public investments will increase by a considerable 205%, opening 23 new hospitals, increasing the capacity of current hospitals, raising the number of intensive care unit beds by 55%, and incubators by 10%. Improving the climate for private sector investments is also on the agenda. But a main priority as well is reducing public debt that has risen sharply to cover the anti-COVID-19 expenses.
The government has been reducing the budget deficit by transforming borrowing policies to long-term, low-interest rate debts. The target is to stabilize the debt levels in the first year and cutting on borrowing in the second and third years of the program.
The last 5 years have seen tough austerity measures and a pandemic that has taken a huge toll on Egyptians. The North African state's prime minister has promised no new burdens on citizens going forward.
There is special emphasis on social safety programs like Takaful, Karama and Dignified Life to improve the lives of 58 million Egyptians by developing 4,658 villages and 175 municipalities. Work has already started on this. There will be raises in salaries and pensions and improving labor skills through vocational training. The plan is aimed at increasing production. This will strengthen the Egyptian pound, which will reflect on the personal incomes and therefore provide a dignified life to the people.
Implementation of the second phase of the economic program is expected to begin in the new fiscal year from the 1st of July. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Let's now take a look at our corporate headline today. Refined output of the 6 platinum group metals, which Implats produces, fell 7% in the quarter ending in March. Now, Impala Platinum, the third largest source of the precious metal in South Africa, says load shedding and community protests did weigh on output in its third quarter. It did, however, increase its sales by drawing down inventory. And Nigeria's central bank has removed the boards of FNB Holdings and its main subsidiary, First Bank Nigeria, for appointing a new chief executive officer without regulatory approval. Now, Governor Godwin Emefiele says the Apex Bank ousted Benga Shobo as CEO of First Bank Nigeria and reinstated former head Adeshola Adedunton a day after it queried the appointment. Meanwhile, Barclays boss Jess Staley has said the UK is about to experience its biggest economic boom since the aftermath of World War II. His upbeat assessment came as Barclays revealed its profits for the first 3 months of this year had more than doubled from a year earlier to $3.3 billion. Now, Staley also says a combination of the successful vaccine rollout and extra built-up savings of about $276 billion in customer bank accounts had a significant impact on the bank's performance. And finally, EU antitrust regulators have charged Apple with abusing its dominance in the music streaming market via restrictive rules. The EU competition enforcer says the issue relates to Apple's restrictive rules for its App Store that force developers to use its own in-app payment system and prevent them from informing users of other options. Now, this is the first case out of 4 that could lead to a hefty fine and changes in its business model. And that's a look at our corporate headlines. Well, let's take a short break now, still coming up on the show. South African Airways Technical starts a retrenchment process to cut up to 60% of its staff. And Nigeria's limited access to electricity takes a toll on businesses in the country.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business, only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible? And why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Central Nigeria. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business. Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects just in terms of revenues from taxes around $45 billion. 10% of that, and you devote it to the energy sector. Problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. Now, more than 1,200 employees stand to lose their jobs at SAA Technical. That, of course, is a subsidiary of South African Airways. The state-owned airline has been in business rescue since December 2019. Well, CGTN's Angela Coppola picked.
Notices were issued by SAA Technical Management on 29 April. The notice was expected.
It comes as no surprise, to be honest. 70% of SAA Technical's income is generated from SAA Airways. So with SAA Airways that's not working, 70% is obviously eroded, and the rest of the finances are generated via Mango and Come being in business rescue, and we know what the issues are at Mango.
One of the key reasons for the start of the retrenchment process is that SAA remains in business rescue, and this is a major concern for another union.
We believed as NUMSA that they were making a fundamental mistake by not incorporating and including the subsidiaries in the business rescue process. They didn't do that. And now the subsidiaries are all in distress.
The country's labour laws give management and labour officials 60 days from the first notice to finalise the matter. It coincides with the estimated delivery date of emergency government funding.
The monies that is requested is detailed within the appropriation bill that's currently before Parliament, but Parliament is currently in recess. So we don't have any answers to that as yet. But the point is, even if there's appropriation, one can just look at what is the company or the airlines currently standing still. It's SAA, Mango has issues, and now SAA Technical. It just shows that the constant reliance on taxpayers are not working.
Others hold out some hope that the funding will arrive in time.
I think when we meet with the management of SAA Technical under the auspices of the CCMA, hopefully we will be able to engage each other, and that funding, if it is made available and is due to be made available in time, that might be able to mitigate against what SAA Technical has basically said, what they're proposing with the Section 189.
SAA Technical had little chance of making it through the pandemic, considering that 3 of its biggest clients were either in business rescue or about to enter the process, which now means that around 1,000 people are going to be jobless from the end of June. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's go to Nigeria now. The country's electricity woes have worsened, and that's after the recent failure of some of its generating power plants. The country is ranked second behind India amongst nations with large populations that have limited access to electricity. CGTN's Philly Haza now tells us how business owners across the nation are facing hard times as a result of the chronic power outages.
Esther Mike has been running this salon for 3 years. She says due to poor electricity supply, she has not been able to make much profit.
Most of what we do here depends solely on electricity. We blow dry, we wash, even down to like treating of hairs. We use electricity to do it. And then most of the time, like 80% of the time, we have to rely on generators. And then of course the fuel prices, like the whole thing has hiked, and we are barely making profit really.
The World Bank reports that businesses and households across the country lose up to $29 billion annually as a result of power failure in Nigeria. The Ministry of Power says 16 out of 28 power generating plants have either suffered a breakdown, are experiencing gas shortage, or are undergoing maintenance. It's happening at a time when Nigeria's economy is just recovering from recession and businesses are still struggling to cope from months of shutdown last year due to COVID-19.
In the energy mix of Nigeria, about 82% of our generating stations depend on gas. So when there's a shortage of gas or an outage of gas, the power generation falls. And we also have even the maintenance culture problem. We have a backlog of broken down turbines that have not been fixed. We have no service maintenance contracts not being honored. We have the preventive maintenance not being executed until there's a breakdown. Then we now go into corrective maintenance.
For years, despite investments in power, Nigeria has only distributed an average of 4,000 megawatts for its over 200 million population, far from a required 200,000 megawatts, according to the Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors. Experts say beyond funding, the country's power grid is obsolete and needs to be decentralized from being mainly based in the south.
Why do they have to generate in the south and all the way to the core north? We have the different energy mix within the area. Look at the northern area, what works for them. It even put a less toll on the transmission network, because you don't have to generate an all, there are losses along the line. There are lots of losses along the line. Then there is the cost of manpower to maintain the network.
The Ministry of Power has promised to rectify the problems and restore better electricity supply soon.
The government says it's in partnership with the World Bank, German firm Siemens and other private bodies to develop other sources of energy like solar to meet its goal of transmitting and distributing 25,000 megawatts of electricity by 2025.
And if that goal is met, entrepreneurs like Esther can make more profits and the country could in turn generate better revenue for its currently fragile economy. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
And let's move on now. As we wrap up our special coverage on the impact of the coronavirus in Africa, we show you how one sector has thrived during the pandemic, as well as a variety of tech innovations from across the continent that have helped in dealing with the crisis. Now, in South Africa, an e-commerce boom is driving new consumer trends and an overwhelming demand for digital skills. The tech-enabled sector is one of a few that have thrived since the country imposed lockdown restrictions close to a year ago now. Here's CGTN's Julie Shire with more.
South Africa's e-commerce boom has been a silver lining in the battered economy. It's also one of few sectors on the hunt for new talent.
Many companies are looking to hire remote workers. So you don't have to be in a big city. You don't have to be close to the head office of a big company. You can work from home and you can do this and you can learn these skills. So you can put it on your CV and suddenly you have developed a career skill that employers are looking for.
A year-long COVID-19 lockdown has forced people to live, work, study and shop at the click of a button.
Groceries, I think that was a very important one because you didn't want to go and stand in the grocery queue with somebody coughing on your back. And services like Zultsi and Checker 6060, which is owned by Zultsi, they just took off. But big retailers and small retailers have really had to pull up their socks because now the customers are demanding that we as online sellers give them the products that they are looking for.
E-commerce was already on the up before the COVID-19 pandemic, but South Africa's lengthy lockdown has given it a boost as many consumers choose to stay away from shops.
A lot of people through COVID tried shopping online for the first time, and that growth curve that was kind of taking 25% year on year, it definitely boosted. It was like a step growth. And unlike many fads or trends where the growth goes up and then comes down, this one has continued to go up and it will continue to go that way.
Clothing retailers too saw a boost in online activity. Africa Fashion International fast-tracked its digital boutique to allow designers to earn an income during the lockdown.
People are going online inquiring about items. Some of them are inquiring whether they can be put in touch with stylists, inquiring about some of the designer items, and then also going through shopping, adding to baskets, and just a lot of people going through our platform and really engaging with the platform. So that really has been boosted by COVID because people can't go now to boutiques.
South Africa's e-commerce sector is still small compared to the rest of the world. Growth is hampered by limited access to the internet and electronic devices, but it has helped many startups and small businesses stay afloat when others were closing their doors. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Now, of course, since the onset of COVID-19 restrictions, Africa has been adjusting to the new normal. Internet connectivity has been a pivotal part of restructuring studies, routine work schedules, as well as running businesses. Well, CGTN's Nick Mudimba has more on that.
The COVID-19 pandemic struck the world, and in order to curb the disease spread, governments instituted a number of measures, and stay-at-home was a game-changer. Curfews were ordered and public gatherings were banned. The internet and related technologies have proven to be essential tools in this period of implementation of the measures and citizens exercising economic, social and political rights. Education, normal work schedules and supply chain sectors were greatly affected.
Life is actually moving to the internet. The internet has libraries. The internet is where academia is operating. The internet is where dating is happening. The internet is where finance is and business is, and governments are actually on the internet. And so the internet is the new city. It has everything. And this pandemic has further pushed us deeper into the internet, making us more of an interconnected community, a global village, as it were.
In Kenya, there have been several positive and supportive developments through initiatives from technology service providers. Mobile network operation, Kenyan service producer Safaricom, has also doubled the speed of its mobile internet bundles for subscribers.
The truth of the matter is, in a pandemic like this, a lot of things shift. Money shifts, economic formations shift, alliances shift. That is the reality of a crisis, that they not only affect, for example, in this case, your health, they affect your economy, and they affect who holds economic power.
The rise in digital sales also showed up, and the Kenyan government capitalized on the trend to impose tax in Kenya's 2020 finance bill. The taxable entities now include mobile applications, e-books and movies, e-learning, including the supply of online courses and training, supply of digital content for listening, viewing or playing on any audio, visual or digital media, supply of search engine and automated help desk services, software, drivers, website, filters and firewalls, website hosting, online data, warehousing, file sharing and cloud storage services.
Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
While COVID-19 continues to cause devastating disruption to the global economy, more than a year into the pandemic, it has become a strong driver of creativity and innovation in Africa. From e-learning to alternative ventilators, researchers and innovators across the continent have been working hard in coming up with solutions to contain the spread of the pandemic. Well, tonight we explore some of those homegrown innovations tackling COVID-19.
According to an analysis conducted by the WHO Africa Regional Office, Africa accounted for 120 of the 1,000 new or modified technologies developed worldwide to respond to COVID-19. That's 12.8% of technologies developed globally in response to the pandemic. The data shows that Kenya, Nigeria, Rwanda and South Africa were the leading innovators, accounting for 37% of the continent's share. In an era of COVID-19, wearing of masks can at times pose a challenge at airports or when simply trying to unlock your phone. This facial recognition software from South Africa is the latest innovation, hoping to provide a solution.
We actually had to come up with a solution that uses a blend or a mixture of conventional image processing techniques and what we call artificial intelligence techniques. You can actually recognize a person as they walk through the terminal without you having to ask them to take their mask off.
Another innovation awaiting validation is a mobile ultra-cold freezer, which could be a game-changer in vaccine delivery to poor and remote areas globally.
You can get something like 600,000 vaccines in one aircraft. It simplifies your entire logistics chain, but more importantly, it means that you can dump it in the field and you can forget about it in the sun, and for 25 days, you know that you will have GPS control, you will have temperature monitoring.
Over the past 12 months, efforts have been ramped up to make simple open-source ventilators, which have been in short supply around the world. According to the Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention, most African countries have only a handful of the machines and 10 have none at all. This new innovation from the Loughborough University, however, could soon be able to boost that number thanks to its innovative low-cost ventilator. Developed by a team of Nigerian engineers, Shivent does not depend on electricity and is widely replicable. The device can be plugged into existing oxygen supply channels in hospitals, making it suitable for low-resourced settings. Following trials in Lagos, Nigeria and India, plans are underway to roll out Shivent across sub-Saharan Africa and Asia. As with the African e-health space, EdTech on the continent has also received a bit of a boost from the lockdown enforced by the COVID-19 pandemic. Data by EdTech Hub, a global non-profit research group, shows that the use of EdTech innovations serving African countries doubled in 2020 as schools across the continent closed their doors. According to the report, the average users of EdTech increased by 97% in the wake of school closures. The vast majority of these users were viewers of a TV show produced by Ubongo. The Tanzanian innovative multimedia platform centers on two shows, Akili and Me and Ubongo Kids. Ubongo's free content is reaching over 17 million households on broadcast and online platforms in 40 countries. And with the end of the pandemic nowhere near in sight, Ubongo is set to continue to play a critical role in helping children amid these unprecedented times. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
And that's a wrap of our week-long series looking back at how the coronavirus pandemic has disrupted economies across Africa in the past year, as well as highlighting the continent's efforts in improving health tech innovations, putting Africa on the global map for global solutions. Of course, you're watching Global Business Africa. Do stay with us. We'll be right back with more business news after the short break.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 48 hours of rain.
No one again began holding guns. Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
The Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant.
Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being. And to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Well, here's a quick recap of today's top headlines. Kenya plans to repatriate some refugees and grant residency to others in Kenya. The government's response was in line with the UN's request to ensure vulnerable refugees will be protected. Now, this is after the East African nation announced it will shut camps holding over 410,000 refugees by June 2022. Meanwhile, Somalia's President Mohamed Farmajo is expected to address Parliament on a Saturday in a bid to restore a deal made last year for a proposed electoral framework. Now, the September 2020 agreement refers to a process under which clan elders select delegates for electoral colleges. The Electoral College then chooses federal lawmakers who then finally pick a president. And India is reporting another world record for daily coronavirus infections. It has confirmed 380,000 new cases, but medical experts believe actual figures may be much higher. This comes as global cases hit 150 million. And that's a recap of some of today's top headlines. And now to some international news. The Eurozone's economy has fallen back into recession as the impact of the pandemic continues to bite. Europe's economies have been set back by a renewed surge in infections this year and COVID-related restrictions. Now, the Eurozone shrank by 0.6% in the January to March period, the second consecutive contraction. This is the second such episode, a double-dip recession, since the onset of the pandemic. Italy is the only nation in the zone to repeat the pattern, while other countries reported some growth in 1 or 2 quarters. Moving on, China's first smart gas field cluster, the Dongfang gas field cluster, was fully completed on Thursday off the coast of the southern province of Henan. It's made ocean oil drilling a relatively remote affair. Here's CGTN's Lin Wu with the story.
Dongfang Gas Field Cluster, located in the western South China Sea, started construction 20 years ago. Today, its annual output of natural gas exceeds 5.7 billion cubic meters, which is the main source of civil and industrial gas in Hainan. The field's Intelligent Production Control Center has even adapted the Internet of Things, big data, and artificial intelligence as a means of improving work efficiency.
通过操控中心的专家智能团队
The intelligence team in the operations center is in charge of processing data in real time to troubleshoot problems. The center can also manage the production system data for allocating resources.
At platform, which is used for pumping oil from wells in the sea. In 2019, China's first unmanned wellhead platform supporting remotely controlled operations was built, bidding farewell to the era of manually resumption of production and shortening a system restart time in case of emergency or other issues, from 2 hours to just 20 minutes.
尤其在台风
When encountering severe typhoons, the smart oil field can remotely stop and start production. After the platform is closed, the gas sources can be adjusted to ensure normal gas supply to downstream customers.
Next, the China National Offshore Oil Corporation intends to jump from a traditional management model to a modern, digital, and smart system, underpinning the high-quality development of China's oil industry at sea. Lin Wo, Sansha Satellite TV for CGTN.
And on that note, here's a quick look at Africa's commodity markets today. Oil prices slipping almost 2%, taking a breather after touching their highest in 6 weeks. Of course, those concerns of wider lockdowns in India and Brazil to curb the COVID-19 pandemic continue to offset a bullish outlook on summer fuel demand and, of course, an economic recovery. Gold prices also falling today, on track to post their worst week in a month. That's as strong U.S. economic data elevated Treasury yields today. Well, let's take a short break now. Still coming up on the show. Strawberry farming gains popularity amongst young Nigerians. And Ethiopia turns to blockchain to improve its education system.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
The greatest journeys. The greatest sights. The greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN. See the difference.
And now to a quick news update. The U.S. is planning on imposing travel restrictions to India starting on the 4th of May. And that, of course, is due to a rise in the COVID-19 cases in the country, which are said to be nearly 387,000 new cases so far. Well, let's head back to the continent now. More young Nigerians are turning to strawberry farming as a viable source of income. That's amid rising unemployment rates that stand at 33%. Strawberry farming in Nigeria is mostly carried out in the north-central state of Plateau, which has a favorable weather for the fruit to thrive. Here's CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam with more on that report.
Theophilus Twamian, harvesting the last batch of strawberries at the tail end of its planting season. The 45-year-old was seeking to augment his monthly income 4 years ago and found strawberry farming a lucrative business. The fruit is in high demand here in Nigeria. Theophilus harvests more than 60 kilograms of strawberries weekly. 1 kilogram sells for about $3, so he rakes in an average $180 weekly.
Strawberry has helped me in many ways. One, it has helped me to pay my children's school fees. That helped me to manage my family also. Because of this strawberry that I've been farming, I don't touch my salary again. I use the money of strawberry to feed my family, to train my children, to pay their school fees.
Strawberry farming is fast gaining traction in Nigeria. Asides being eaten fresh, it's also used as raw materials for food production. Farmers here require only a small portion of land, which makes it easy for many young farmers like Theophilus to cultivate. But experts say there's a much bigger earning potential yet to be harnessed.
There's a huge market for it, and we have opportunity to create more awareness about the strawberry crop and its potential, the value chain, the whole strawberry value chain, which would readily be embraced by young people who need little or minimal guidance to go into the local production. The potential for job creation is huge. It also begs for probably private collaboration in adaptation.
But a greater percentage of the harvests go to waste due to weak preservation capacity for agricultural produce.
The reason why we still have 60% post-harvest loss annually in Nigeria is the reason why we have a growing rate of unemployment, because the solution to that post-harvest loss is the jobs that are not created, So once you open up the post-harvest sector as an industry that has potential.
Reports from the Bureau of Statistics show that 33.3% of Nigeria's working population are unemployed. But with strawberry farming, more young Nigerians are able to beat the unemployment challenge. A further expansion of the production chain would open up a vista of opportunities in the subsector that could further close the unemployment gap. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Plateau, Nigeria.
And in Ethiopia, the Ministry of Education has partnered with a global blockchain company to digitize various aspects of its operations. Now, the system will allow authorities to remotely monitor the performance of thousands of schools in the country. Here's CGTN's Daniela Pearson bringing us the details.
A blockchain is a database that is shared across a network of computers. An initiative by Ethiopia's Education Ministry will use it to digitize record keeping and help allocate resources, among other tasks.
Here in Ethiopia, we've just signed our first major deal to implement a digital identity solution across Ethiopia's education sector for an initial pilot of 5 million users. So we think this is probably the largest blockchain implementation done, and the beauty of it for us is how extensible it is. We're starting off in the high school education layer, but following that...
ID driven, then blockchain driven, performance analytics driven, real-time data driven. So at least I would, as Minister of Education, I would be able to locate exactly where, for example, very good students are in mathematics or in physics or in chemistry.
Blockchains were previously used to support cybercurrencies like Bitcoin and Ether. However, many other possible uses are now emerging.
On the education perspective, one of the things that people struggle with is proving that they've actually achieved the degrees and the grades which they say they have. It's quite easy to falsify a university certificate, and you see these kind of issues crop up with people claiming to have done things that they haven't. This new form of identity would enable you to share a single link to an employer. You could click on it and then follow through. Blockchain verifies, to be able to follow through on the blockchain, the verifications that you've actually achieved what you said you have. So we think this will also be important for employers, and hopefully should be able to drive future growth in the employment market.
Some tech experts believe the relatively low inputs that blockchains require make them ideal for speeding up the provision and improvement of services in developing countries. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
And before we go today, here's a quick look at Africa's currencies. South Africa's rand dropping 0.9% as private sector credit growth slowed in March, and also on weaker than expected Chinese factory indicators. But of course, the currency is still set to gain for a third consecutive month. Meanwhile, in Kenya, the shilling remains stable amid lack of demand for dollars in the market. In Nigeria, the naira gained at the official window, and that's despite a 30.7% drop in dollar supply and, of course, low liquidity in the country's forex market. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.